Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am the two-time Naboxed Award-winning Naboxed. And I am right outside the Anvil Center in New Westminster, British Columbia. And I'm about to check out the New Westminster Museum and the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Now, before I go in there, if you like what you see, make sure you like. Quite a few of you who watch are not subscribed. Please do. Come on, support your YouTubers. So, let's see what's going on, folks. This is a Salish basket, locally made. Salish lidded storage baskets with handle, made from coiled cedar with black and red imbrications. And the other Salish basket, Salish burden basket for gathering, made from coiled cedar bundles with red and white colored imbrications with overlapping layers. The newcomers, explorers and fur traders, 1770 to 1857. The first known European explorers in the area were Spanish, who came during the 1770s, followed by British captains James Cook and George Vancouver, who explored the coastline between 1776 and 1794. Interested in the abundance of furs reported by explorers, Simon Fraser traveled in 1808 from the interior of BC to the mouth of the river that now bears his name. Fur traders and missionaries soon followed. In 1827, the Hudson's Bay Company set up a trading post at Fort Langley just up the river from here. Meet Lee Sing Yen. Lee Sing Yen was an ordinary man leading an ordinary life as a Chinese laborer in Canada. It is rare to be able to name such a man and learn details about his life. Using a few pieces of paper donated to the New Westminster Archives, we can tell some of Lee Sing Yen's story. He was born in a village in southern China in 1897. He came to Canada to escape poverty, natural disasters, and war that plagued his homeland. He was 34 when he came, older than most Chinese immigrants at the time. He had to borrow money to pay for the $500 head tax. It would have taken decades before he could repay the debt. He left Hong Kong on the Empress of India on August 24th, 1912. He traveled traveling in steerage. The ship arrived in Vancouver on September 15th. All the Chinese passengers were held in a quarantine shack that was just for Chinese. It was an unheated open room located on the pier. Lee Sing Yen was lucky. He was only there for 3 days before he was examined for diseases and questioned by Chinese immigration officers. Some were held for months before they could leave. Lee Sing Yen spent the rest of his life in New Westminster, living in rooming houses around Chinatown. He was a seasonal sawmill worker, was unemployed for a few years, got a job as a gardener, and worked until he was 72. He was 44. When he was 44, Lee Sing Yen saved enough money to make one trip back to China. He may have gone to visit his wife, Yi Shi, or to get married. During this trip, he fathered 2 children, but he left a family behind when he returned to Canada a year later. There is no record of his wife ever having come to Canada. She died in China somewhere between 1940 and 1962. He regularly sent money to his son in Hong Kong. There is no evidence of what happened to his other child. Lee Sing Yen suffered from kidney disease in the last years of his life. He was hospitalized for 9 months at the Royal Columbian before he died on April 3rd, 1962. The Dufferin Coach was built in 1867 by M.H. Black & Co. in San Francisco for the BC Express Company at a cost of $1,200. The coach carried Lord and Lady Dufferin on their tour of British Columbia. Lord Dufferin was the Governor General of Canada and the first one to visit the province. After the visit, the Express Company continued to use the coach on its routes. By 1924, it was abandoned by Bill Livingstone in a field near Cottonwood House between the towns of Quesnel and Bakerville. The coach has been part of New Westminster celebration since 1929, when it was displayed at the exhibition in Queen's Park. It was saved from the fire. It was saved from the fire there, and then conveyed the May Queen and other dignitaries to May Day celebrations until it was presented to the museum at Irving House in 1951. 4 years later, Dave Pound, a 76-year-old veteran of the carriage business, restored the coach. The coach, made of oak with iron tires, weighs approximately 1,134 kilograms and is about 2.6 meters tall. The springs are made of 16-ply leather. In 1897, things were looking up for the city. New Westminster was the market hub for the Fraser Valley, with people coming by land and by boat. The river remained a busy port. Major industries, including fishing, canneries, and sawmills. Electric streetlights and streetcars were all operating. The trams connected the bustling city to the smaller community of Vancouver. I wanted to put that in there because now that we're in 2024, I wanted to say the smaller community of Vancouver. I'm sorry, that's just like over 100 years later, that is so hilarious. Okay, this is a field lacrosse stick as opposed to this one, which is a box lacrosse stick on the right. But the thing that interests me here is the fact that there's a glass cane. You know, there's just the concept of a glass cane I find to be very curious because of how fragile glass can be. So it's like, yeah, I'd rather have something that's like less shattery. So, if you go back to my walking tour from September, I may have mentioned the fire because of one of the mosaics. So anyway, there was a fire in 1898. And this doll here, Lexi's doll, was saved from the 1898 fire. Alexandria Ewan, May Queen in 1900, lived on Carnarvon in the 1890s. Her parents' house burned down during the fire, but as you can tell, the doll was saved. Rotary Club Barrel. Rotary Club Barrel Contest Steel Barrel. After the war, our club was looking for a way to raise funds to support community projects, said a Rotary Club member. They came up with the idea of floating a barrel down the Fraser from Lytton to New Westminster. Ticket buyers would write their guesses on the time the barrel would reach the finish line. And this museum shares its home with the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. You know what? Well, let's see if we can find anything in there. Lacrosse is older than Canada as a nation. The game's name comes from lacrosse, the French word for stick, and the name given by French Jesuits to the stick game they saw being played by Aboriginal groups. It was this game that evolved into modern lacrosse, the most truly Canadian of sports. A lacrosse player must catch, carry, or pass the ball only using the stick, which has a net at one end. Players score goals by using the stick to hurl or throw the ball into the opponent's goal net. They are not allowed to throw the ball by hand or into the crease, the area around their opponent's goal. So here you have field lacrosse, which is basically like more of a soccer layout. And then over here you have box lacrosse, which is, I guess, which resembles where you see the field resembles more of a hockey type setup. And which makes me think that maybe hockey is sort of a combination of soccer and lacrosse when I see these two things side by side. So you see over here, this wall is dedicated to the inductees. And of course, you look over here. The inductees, box player is initialed BP, field player is FP, veteran player VP, builder B, and team T. So there are different ways to get into the obviously they're going to have different people get in, right? So you'll have players, coaches, builders, teams themselves. So anyway, the first one here is 1965. Box players Bill Anthony and Henry Hawkeye Baker. Builder Dr. W.G. Beers. Field players Albin Bunn Clark, Lionel Connicher, John Dot Crickle, builder Dr. W.A. Defoe, box player Alfred Alfie Davey, another box player Bill Dickinson, builder Gene Dopp, E.G. Gene Dopp, box player Jim Douglas, and field player William J. Billy Fitzgerald. That's the top box. There's another. So 1965 starts here. That was the first panel I read, and it goes all the way down here. There's obviously going to be more. Then you have 1966. You go from 60s finish here. 70s, you start the 80s here, onto the 90s, 2000s, and the last class that was inducted was 2022 with Rich Catton, Trish Nicholson, Troy Han Santos, Ray Kamalt, Joanne Stanga, Blaine Harrison, Josh Sanderson, Caleb Toth, Douglas Louis, and Bill Fox. The game evolves. 1900s to 1930s. Amateur and professional leagues were fully established by the beginning of the 20th century. It was not uncommon to have over 11,000 spectators at lacrosse games in Queen's Park, New Westminster. In 1906, the BC Electric Company's interurban flatbed railway cars were converted into lacrosse cars to get spectators to the games. Each car held 100 men and was pulled by an electric locomotive. For 25 cents, the fans were treated to a wild 12-mile ride through the still forested countryside between Vancouver and New Westminster. In 1910, the Montreal Nationals traveled to New Westminster to vie with Salmon Bellies for the Championship of Canada. Though the population of New Westminster at the time was less than 12,000 people, over 15,000 watched the Salmon Bellies defeat the Nationals. Here we have the Crockerton Cup, the World Indoor Lacrosse Champions, and Canada won all 4 of them back in 2003, 2007, 2011, and 2015. And it looks like there's been none since. So they've missed 2019 and 2023. And I'm guessing this is the Minto Cup. And by the looks of it, this looks to be the most decorated one. As you see here, it's got like 4 layers, kind of like the Stanley Cup setup. I see Peterborough, Richmond, Burnaby, Long Branch, New Westminster is on here. Oshawa. It looks like this goes back to the 60s as well. So, yeah, it's definitely an older trophy, but that means there's actual history for this one, people. So here we have the Man Cup. Obviously smaller base than the Minto Cup, but they just have the team names on for each year that was won, as opposed to at like the base of the Minto Cup, they actually have the players' names like they do with the Stanley Cup. But here on the Minto Cup, it's just the team names. And this one actually seems to go back a fair bit. 1938 to 1946 was St. Catherine's won 5 Man Cups during that stretch. So shortly before the Great Depression ended, I guess, and shortly after World War II ended. So, and then you have 1970 to 1981, where the New Westminster Salmon Bellies won 5 Man Cups in that period. In 1970, 72, 74, 76, and 81. We move on to the 90s, where parity emerged between the East and West, with Brampton taking 3, Six Nations 3, Victoria 2, and New Westminster 1. The last of its record holding 24. John Tavares won 3 Mike Kelly Awards, 2 with Brampton and 1 with Six Nations. Okay, I'm going to guess that's not the same John Tavares as with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Tavares currently holds the record for most Man Cup rings at 8. Meanwhile, the Gate brothers, between them, won 6 Mike Kelly Awards, Paul 4 and Gary 2, and 7 Man Cups, Paul 4, Gary 3. And then here you see Sir Donald Mann, obviously the namesake for the Man Cup. And just like over here, the Earl of Minto, the namesake of the Minto Cup. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that about wraps it up for today's video. The New Westminster Museum and the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, both in the same building, so figured, okay, I'll do a bit of both. Now, obviously, I did not cover everything, so feel free to come down and check out the whole stuff, the whole museum and the whole Hall of Fame yourself, and see if there's anything you like. It's by donation, so you don't have to break the bank to get in. And with the museum, there's actually like 3 locations. There's obviously the one here at the Anvil. There's also Irving House, and there's another one that's like, I think, like near Westminster Quay or Westminster Quay or whatever, however you want to pronounce it. And yeah, so like all 3 of those combined are the newest museum and archives. So if you're like the whole local history buff, then you would want to check out all 3 of them. And I only came to the one location. And so anyway, remember, please do subscribe and like the video. Check out my other socials like X/Twitter, whatever you call it. Instagram. I have a Facebook fan page. And I guess that's it. Bye, everyone.